Hello. Once again, it's another episode of Write Once, Read Many. This time covering chapter 23.3. And, yeah, hi Greg. Let's see here. Got the link out there and stuff. Hi Vic. This is once again from the arc Drone. I feel like I totally forgot to mention the arc name on the previous two episodes, but arc 23 is Drone. Which of course bugs can make droning noises. They can be drones. You can see the wards as drones, or Glenn's little minions in his merchandise workshop as drones. There can be a lot of drones. And the audience participation question is, what other book, movie, series would you want to see a scene added that's equivalent to Taylor reading the letters from her friends? As far as, themes go, Taylor sort of tries to... Oh, Greg says, are you trying to tell me Wildbow likes multi-layered story/arc names? Something like that, you know. It's possible that he likes things with multiple meanings. Or he likes it even, some would say, to be ambiguous which meaning he wants you to take from it. But only some would say that. I would never say that. And here is the finished speed draw, The Art of Glenn. We'll get to this during the chapter, but he has turned the monitor around to show Taylor. Yeah, for themes, I feel like the sort of application of power is a theme. Taylor often thinks of like kind of how to work against a normal superpower, and then when she is dealing with a non-parahuman, she still kind of thinks about dealing with them on that level. So yeah. But you know, we'll just move right along past the themes into the chapter itself. So this is a shorter one. It's the next day after the Las Vegas scenario from 23.2. And Taylor walks into Glenn's long open concept office. She sort of has a meeting with him. He agreed to meet with her, but not in private. There's like maps on the walls and stuff, and they have display cases with costumes, what have you. But they need to brand all the new, like, Chevalier's new protectorate, and so things are in full swing, and everyone's running around at top speed to get the new, like, graphics and the new toys and everything. It's a veritable Santa's workshop in here, is what I wrote. But the elves are recent college graduates with marketing degrees. Taylor takes some time to muse on the nature of power and thinks through several comparisons between Glenn and other non-parahumans at the beginning. Tag, Kaye, and Pigot. But then, after harshly judging his clothing, she rudely settles on thinking he's like Skidmark. And I did wanna go through, just read his clothes description real quick. Glenn Chambers wore plaid pants with red and green, and a pink dress shirt. His belt bore a buckle with the PRT logo on it. His hair changed too, parted neatly into what I assumed was geek chic. You can tell that she's looking down on this. And the glasses had changed as well, with thick, round frames. An ID card hung around his neck. He didn't fit any of those particular archetypes. And this is the moment before she thinks that he's like Skidmark. What a kind and good-natured individual this Taylor is. But I think the best way to explain succinctly what she's getting at is that Glenn sweeps people up into his momentum, and he specifically surrounds himself with weak-willed people who he can order around to use as a buffer against people who aren't as easily swayed. I think... Greg says, Taylor is so judgy this chapter. Yeah. I think the way that this was put, when I was reading it this time, I kind of realized like what Skidmark's power is supposed to kind of be like sweeping people up into his momentum, but literalized into like using his sort of physical momentum power. And I had never like fully made that connection before. But yeah, I don't think Glenn would have a sweeping power though. Let's see here. So Glenn is he's got tons of people around him. They keep bringing him different things, like he's given a coffee and then sends that person to immediately do a thing. He gets an action figure and he sort of flips it around until it breaks, and then he tells them they need to go recast the model and make one that's sturdier, etc. And I like his explanation that they can't be seen as flimsy because then it'll be like the real hero is flimsy or something. And he's kind of right, but it's also funny. I do think his like little insights are like a decent way to show that he's like good at this. But sometimes, just sometimes, when you hear these things, you're like, I don't know. It's just a little much. Like, yeah, maybe some people will think of Esoteric as flimsy because the arm broke on the toy, but I don't know. It's a little much. But when you're at the top of the biz, you gotta be the best. And so he hands Taylor a set of graphics to look at for a second and asks her what she thinks. She says they're good, and he says why they're terrible. She tries to counter that she'd buy one of these things, and then he explains his theory of the craft, that they need something clean and tight right now, and stuff. But Taylor counters basically again that she would, if she was a non-cape, then you'd need to convince her things weren't a mess, and she doesn't think that it would work either way. But Glenn keeps sort of redirecting the conversation back in a path where he's sort of got the initiative in the conversation. He keeps like addressing other people and putting her off and stuff. And then that this is when she thinks through her theory of the case on why he's Skidmark, actually. And then she does question herself for one moment. She says maybe he wasn't that bad. Yeah, so then she thinks to herself that she needs to get him alone, otherwise she's not going to get anywhere here. And she sort of asks him, initially if she can speak to him in private. He says he's way too busy, and then it goes back and forth. It's a matter of courtesy, please. And she thinks she's got him. She's smirking to herself on the inside. But then he just totally blows her off. Isn't it just as discourteous to interrupt me in the middle of my work when I'm already doing you a favor by meeting you? Yeah. He is unfazed by her little power play. And then she tries to sort of, she's like, I'll just say everything in public if that's how you want it until you get annoyed with me. And then she just starts going off about how last night they nearly got Rhyme killed and they lost Pretender and everything. And then he just sort of like asks for his next meeting, basically. And so she keeps going on, and she's blaming him. She says, the bad guys won, and it's partially your fault. And then he, I'm sure on purpose, is like, my fault? I wasn't even there. And then she's saying that that she wants him to know about the damage that's being done. The butterflies get brought up, but then she's like, this is bigger than the butterflies. We need to take the gloves off. We need to like really cut loose. And they're, he's still trying to sort of put off the conversation, but then eventually she just says the stuff about like everybody needs to stop holding back, and says, we lost Pretender and we didn't exactly inspire confidence in the Vegas team. That played a part in losing them. And that's the beans that she was not supposed to spill. All the other beans that she was trying to spill to annoy him, those weren't important beans. These were the beans. And so this is when Glenn says, everybody but Weaver out. I hope each of you can find something to do. And then he yells after all of them as they're all leaving that if they leak this, he'll know who had leaked it. He knows anyone they might leak it to. All that. So it kind of... It's I don't know. It's a very funny moment to me when he just like threatens everybody collectively. And then he chides her for sort of saying that in front of everybody. She says that she asked to speak alone. He's like, I said no. And then she's talking about the Vegas wards leaving being a part of why they're like racing to get the new protectorate imagery and PR out there, because it will hopefully it will hopefully be enough of a good thing to stop the Vegas ward's bad PR from sort of washing over people. And Taylor brings up that she does know about subtlety. I kind of ran a group that ruled a city. Glenn says basically that this is a different situation and she needs to act differently here. Taylor decides that his strategy is going to be to sort of belittle her and like, say that she's ignorant of what's going on, which is kind of true. Um, both that that's his strategy and that it's true. And then she starts talking about how good she is as a cape, not really understanding what is going to work in this conversation. It's funny how her mind goes straight to like, I could take anyone in the fight, and then he's like, I don't care about that, and she just like won't listen to that. Um, uh, but yeah. So she's saying how all the collective PRT teams are falling apart and stuff as an organization. Um, and she needs to be out there doing something. And he directs her to Chevalier for like deployment strategy, basically. And she starts saying that she can fight with she can fight against like any wards and beat them probably with just the butterflies, which this is when he brings it up again that they're not questioning that she's a strong cape. They know she's a strong cape, but when she talks about it and she says she can do the butterflies normally, but when something bad happens, like the sniper, she's got to go all out. And then Glenn accurately assesses that if they let her go all out when she thinks it's like worth going all out, it will be an endless loop of serial escalations, as he says. And then says that what they're really trying to do is make sure that she's dependable in terms of like she will actually follow orders, she will have a consistent like demeanor and restraint. She brings up the fact that or he brings up the fact that she's known for snapping and inflicting sudden violence, including and but not limited to murder. So she's brought up the fact that they're testing her multiple times, and she says, always testing me. I listened. I followed your orders, and the test doesn't serve a purpose as long as I know about it. And so she's just trying to like do anything to get around this. Glenn brings up the fact that she didn't even follow the orders. She stung Bambina, which I brought up last time. It's like, you think they're not going to notice this, Taylor? And they did notice. And then she justifies that it was to save people and that it made the difference in like stopping the situation. But then and I mean, she makes a very apt comparison that it part of the difficulty with this chapter when I was trying to like write any outline is it's just like I kept just like being like, how do I say this without just quoting these characters over and over again? But she goes, would you blame me if I picked up a drop gun and shot someone who was aiming a surface-to-air missile launcher at me? And then he says it's a little different, and I actually agree with Taylor here that it's an almost exact parallel. But then yeah, Glenn says it's basically it's not about the like level of force that's being used. It's about whether she can follow the orders at all. And so far she's proven that she can't, because every time, well, the two times, each of the two times she's gone out, she has not followed orders. And has always tried to work around the restrictions. But when she's called on the fact that she actually has constantly broken the restrictions, etc., then she just goes back to the fact that she's good at like cape stuff. She's saying that they should use her for all sorts of like purposes that normal heroes couldn't be used for, like because of how she's got the villainy background and she's got such a versatile power. And, Glenn, again, brings up that the public's perception of the situation is actually a problem. Um, and, and the fact that she killed Alexandria is going to be relevant in people's minds for a long time. It's not going to just go away overnight. So, they need to wait until things quiet down on that front. And right now they need like a very heroic Vegas team to make up for the sort of semi-villainous team who didn't have the best public perception, maybe, I guess. He says, our heroes in Vegas tend to be a little grayer than white, and an ex-villain would fit, but not now. So, yeah. And then this is when she says that the butterflies aren't her, etc. And then he shows her the security camera footage as seen in this artwork here. It was me crawling through a window. That would be from the night I retaliated against Tag. Odd, seeing how the bugs moved in coordination with me. When I turned my head in the video, the orientation of every bug in the swarm changed in the same moment. Yeah, it's really fun when you get to see Taylor doing like bug stuff from other people's perspective. And then this is just a new layer of it. It's her seeing herself do something and be off-put by herself. Kind of like when she sees the newspaper clipping in Arc 5 and she's like, wow, there are a lot of bugs in that picture. Even though they're swarming around her. There's no audio to the scene that she's watching, and somebody sort of reaches for her, and she steps out of the way, and as she steps, her swarm moves too, so it looks like she sort of moves places with the swarm. She says, a simple step to one side, in the half second she couldn't be seen, but it misled the eyes, and I couldn't remember doing it. I never consciously added the trick to my repertoire. So she's like, she's got so many moves that she doesn't even know all the moves she's using. And it perturbs her. It doesn't say it as much here, but this is clearly part of an ongoing trend she'll talk about in the next chapter, where she's worried about Alien Cat Daddy says, looking back, does that actually happen in the chapter with Tag? I could check on it. I don't think that it's written like that the words are there, but she does crawl in through a window and then like sort of walk through people casually into Tag's office. So there's certainly like leeway for it to have happened. But what was I saying? Yeah, so she's worried that her passenger is taking over like her actions, and that there's like she's unclear how much control it has, etc. So that's an ongoing concern for her, especially after Arc 22, when her passenger like did so much stuff while she was unconscious, and like her power was just going and going. And of course, mind-altering things don't work on her the same way they work on other people, as we've seen throughout the book. But yeah, Glenn totally gets her ass here. He goes, if you told me that girl was a member of the Slaughterhouse 9, I wouldn't have batted an eyelash. And then Taylor compares this to when people hear their own voice on audio recordings and it sounds terrible to them. But she says the movements of the swarm, it wasn't familiar to me. And Glenn says, that isn't marketable. And then this is when Taylor tries to argue that there's some sort of middle ground. Glenn says that he was trying to break her out of a habit with this and see if she could change how she functioned, but she didn't. He didn't think it would throw her off kilter that much, is what he says. But I guess I'm surprised by that they didn't think so. But she brings up Rhyme nearly dying, Pretender getting taken, and he brings up what I said last. I didn't remember he brought this up, but last week I brought up that Bambina's group got captured, all three of them, and Taylor just says they'll likely get free, and it's like, maybe, I guess. But that's an argument against like any I guess against any like capture is just like they'll probably get free. And it's like that could be true, Taylor. I guess is that what's your argument here? To not capture them, or that it's not worth doing, or whatever? And I agree with Glenn. It would be good if they can get some of these, probably not Bambina, but one of the other two to join them. Like, pretty good power to have the "you can't attack me" power, and like a shooty, what do you call it? Shooty, shaker power. Pretty good. But then anyway, Glenn paused the video before turning it around, and that's I think what we're seeing is the yellow lenses. But then Taylor says that she can work on being a little less nightmarish, which we would all hope that she'd work on that. And this is when Chevalier and Defiant show up. Chevalier speaks as he enters, and basically, she had asked when the restrictions would end, and he says that it's when she joins the Protectorate that they would end. She balks at this clearly, saying, "Until I turn 18." And then Chevalier mentions that she's murdered 2 people, 3 by her own admission. And he says 2 PRT directors, 1 major hero. But what I think he means is 3 PRT directors. She's a killer, but she only kills PRT directors. And then this is when Chevalier reveals that it was actually Glenn who had argued for her, and had gotten them to agree to this compromise. Taylor is shocked and looks at Glenn, and he just shrugs. And this is when her heart grew 3 sizes, much like the Grinch. And then Chevalier brings up, or it continues just saying that she has blood on her hands, and they need to ensure that things are actually safe. And then she complains that the world is going to end before her 18th birthday, and they should be using her more judiciously, essentially. And Chevalier says that this isn't all set in stone, but they need to wait for now. She needs patience. He'll actually say in a few paragraphs here, but you have to be patient. But, Chevalier compliments her, saying he was there for the fight against Echidna, and saw not only the Undersiders, but specifically her in action. And he thinks that she probably saved 1 person for every person that she's hurt, given her sort of stuff before the Shatterbird attack in Arc 11. And when Taylor says that it doesn't end up mattering in the end, he's like, it does matter in the end. Just give it time. And then Defiant says that this she should take this as a reprieve. She sort of finally accepts this, even though she says, I couldn't put up with this. She, in the context of the conversation, accepts it. And she says, there's one last thing. If I can't help directly, let me help indirectly. I can outfit your heroes, most of them. And then they say at first that they want to, that they had wanted to work out a deal like they do for the Tinkers, and that they could have a payment allowance with the costumes that were produced. She says she doesn't want money, but she does need like workshop stuff. And then she says, and equipment to Defiant. And it's this is the first hintings of her getting Tinker gear to augment her heroing in the field. And then we get a page break. It ends there. Defiant doesn't say, yes, I'm gonna make you some sick ass Tinker gear. But in our minds, we know that will happen. So she's back in the prison, and she's moving spiders around in the back corridors and in like equipment rooms and things. And she eats a rat. Well, she doesn't eat the rat, but the spiders eat a rat. It's kind of like she eats a rat. And she has this whole like thing in her mind how she can't just be Weaver, who's like a true blue hero. That's just not her. And she can't be a villain with good PR. And then she thinks that she has to find a middle ground. And then she starts, she's saying she's going to find a middle ground with this spiders thing as the backdrop. And the spiders are, of course, her circumventing the rules again, because she was told not to do this. And then at the end of the last chapter, she thought, like, I'm not supposed to do this, but I really wanna. And then she's mass producing silk, and she says to herself how it's calming, and maybe when I get to finally leave this place, I can pack up all this extra spider silk in the Pendragon, and everything will be chill. And then this is clearly like coping mechanisms that she's doing that are like just obviously out of bounds if she was being reasonable at all, but she is able to justify to herself. She's like, I just gotta, basically. The guard brings her mail. There's a whole bunch of it. And then it had been checked to make sure there wasn't any drugs or anthrax inside. And nobody seems to have sent her any anthrax, which is good. But then she's got all sorts of mail from strangers and fans. It says there's words of support, criticism, death threats. And then the ones from Brockton Bay, I'll talk about during the characters section, because otherwise I'll basically be saying the same stuff, because I feel like each letter deserves to be the main focus of the character bit for that person. Anyway, so after reading all these letters, she thinks about the very last segment, the try hard. Maybe that was the push I needed, such as it was. She puts all the mail together between her books. Probably not all of it. Probably just the ones that she was going to keep. And then she gets out a notebook and she goes all like Arc 1 on us and starts, pre-Arc 1 even, starts writing in a notepad. Although this time I hope not wasting any time putting it in code. And start sketching out designs for her new costume. She wants to have a mix of her old self and her new, hero persona. She doesn't want to feel like she's fully giving up her old self, and that this isn't going to work if she has to. So, she tries to think of like weapons she might be able to get, like how Dovetail has a containment foam launcher, and then she thinks beyond that she wants something to let her fly, like when she had Atlas, and she writes down jetpack with beetle wings, flight system, and she says it was pushing 4 a.m. by the time I had the sketches and outlines at an acceptable point. So she just stayed up all night, like scribbling away. 1, she really could be a tinker. 2, it's funny how like villain coded and mad scientist coded she always is. And then she, I think for the backpack jetpack beetle wings thing, this is what she's referring to, but she says, the costume a Defiant Dragon had given me was theirs, not mine. The fighting style that had been dictated was Glenn's and Chevalier's. This would be me. So I don't know if she means like the whole costume concept or just the bug jetpack, but I mean, you know, she's just trying to find something to cling to. She's actually acting like really, she's really, really on edge. Like, this is the chapter where she doesn't get into a fight, so she has nowhere to let off steam. She loves fighting, and she hates not fighting. Chapter thoughts. It's cool how this is like, I feel like this chapter has almost as much like, it's got like a, like it really moves the needle on a lot of characters. So it's really like, and I guess I don't mean a lot of characters. It moves the needle a lot on Glenn and a little on maybe the perception of Taylor, because she has this weird self-perception thing. And then so yes, I won't say a lot of characters move a lot. Just Glenn and Taylor, really. Also, why do I keep spelling his name with one N in my notation? He's clearly Glenn with 2 N's. I need to acknowledge the double N. I don't know that I have that many thoughts on this chapter. I like it. It's interesting. It makes me like Glenn. But further chapters will make me like Glenn even more. So it is outshined in that respect. Alien Cat Daddy CGS, do you have any thoughts on the fact that this is a PRT chapter and you love the PRT? Glenn even has a PRT belt buckle. Hopefully you're still there to answer that question. But, yeah. Chapter thoughts, whatever. Arc stuff. Shortest chapter in the arc. It's like the middle chapter, pivot point. She goes from testing and fighting, and the next chapter will... It's almost the opposite of the normal arc structure, where they do some, like, they do some talking, they do whatever, and then they fight at the end. I don't think there's any more fights in this arc. I think we saw the 2 that are going to happen, and that's what we get. As far as characters, most of this chapter is focused on Glenn and a conversation with him. Before his sort of minions leave, they're just kind of like extensions of him, and he's like sending them around. You know, Taylor doesn't like Glenn, but Glenn kind of has like a some sort of power to control bugs with his mind. Only he controls people with his words. I don't know. Glenn's kind of a shit, but he's crafty, and he's generally on Taylor's side, and although he's trying to do stuff where he's like testing Taylor, I think he actually would get better results if he just directly talks to her about stuff. I think part of the communication problem is that he feels like he has to circumvent Taylor to get honesty out of her, but I don't necessarily think he does. I think this conversation that was more direct was probably a lot more productive than his other attempts or whatever. Anyway, so, for Glenn, I don't know. I feel like I should have more to say about Glenn. I think he's great, but I would be annoyed by him in real life. Alien says, yeah, she reacts pretty well to direct communication, like with Miss Militia. Yeah. That's true. When she's talking to Miss Militia, when she's talking to Glenn, he finally like is acknowledging her this way. When she and Defiant even have sort of the conversation in the in transit in 21.1, even though she's sort of like mentally like, oh, I can't believe you're being so familiar with me, Defiant. It is. I think it's good at getting them aligned with each other, I guess. Yeah. Glenn's good at what he does. And he's kind of a weird asshole. And I like him. Great character. Chevalier, he walks in the room. He again is like, Taylor, I'm trying to do this whole thing, and you just need to work with me. I've got a plan, and you need to trust me for 5 seconds. And by 5 seconds, I mean 2 years. And he does get Taylor to agree, so I mean it works. Then Defiant's there too. He doesn't really say all that much. Let me see. Defiant. Yeah, he's the one who tells her to take this as the reprieve it is. That's his only line. And then sort of reassures her by being able to give her more equipment, etc. But he kind of stays out of it and lets Chevalier and Glenn handle the situation. Yeah. And then on to the Undersiders, who I will talk about their letters. Brian first. The letter is really sad. He has all sorts of conflicting emotions. He clearly doesn't know how to deal with his emotions very well. He kept having to restart the letter. He needed to take breaks during the letter. And he's going to try and consolidate his thoughts and send her more later. He's mad at her, but he super misses her. He feels betrayed for being left behind. He's really putting himself out there by writing any of this down. I think for Brian, it's actually a step forward to get this much onto the page, because, you know, even in talking about it, if he hadn't said so, it's clear to me that he hates doing this. But that he needs to get his feelings out of himself. Oh, Brian. We're all sad for Brian, except we do hear in one of the other letters that Brian is able to sort of get himself back into gear when he needs to do cape stuff. So he's able to ground himself if it's important. I've listed the Undersiders in the order of their letters. So the next is Aisha. Aisha does not put a lot in the letter. It's a lot of ha 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 and what the fuck. It's very well read in the audiobook. The laugh is pretty good, and then the what the fuck is pretty good. And she signs it a little circle with devil horns instead of a signature. you know, Aisha is clearly at a pre-Brian stage in expressing her emotions through the art form of letter writing. Um, uh, but, you know, she did write a letter at all, which is a step up from some teammates. I think that she had just started to really look up to Taylor before Taylor left. So this is probably a weird feeling moment to Aisha because she didn't like Taylor before, and just when she finally thinks she's okay, then that asshole Taylor leaves. What a jerk. Um, and what the fuck? Joining the heroes. How dare you? Tattletale, of course, writes the longest letter. It's telling them a little bit about what's going on. She mentions, of course, that Brian, you know, what I had said, he had gotten better once he had stuff to do with the Red Hands and the Heartbreaker. Or just Red Hand singular? I don't know why. I think of them as the Red Hands, but I guess they're called Red Hand. Let's see here. So yeah, a bunch of people now that well, they already were moving in, obviously, because Accord, Accord, and the Fallen and the Teeth were in Arc 21, but the same threats that were more medium term that Tattletale was worried about are moving in now. The group led by Barrow called the what are they called? The Lost Garden. So they've got Heartbreaker and Lost Garden and a potential rival in Money Crimes, the Red Hand. So they got a lot going on. And Tattletale really conveys the mood of the situation in a way that none of the others do. Like, Brian's letter talks about his own emotions, which is good. Aisha's letter does not talk about anything. Lisa's letter actually tells about the situation there. Alex's letter does not exist and is a PS. Or it's a PSS. You know, I would expect it to be PPS for postscript, but she writes PSS for postscript, I guess. Charlotte's letter, very brief. And then Rachel's letter, very much about her own situation. But yeah, Tattletale's the only one who gives her sort of a rundown of the general situation for everybody. And is good. It catches us, the audience, and Taylor, the Taylor, up with what's going on in Brockton Bay. I think it's been like... I'm not sure how long it is between 23.1 and 23.2, so it's maybe been a few weeks since she left. But anyway, so yeah, there's probably cool cape fights going on between the Undersiders and the Lost Garden. And we learned that Flechette has changed her name to Foil. She and Perian are going to stick together and seem to be working out as a pair. When Tattletale wrote this, she was finally done with her thinker headache, which lasted for a long time. And now she's trying to meter out her power a little better. We can tell from the letter that even, like, whether or not things are stable, she's very much conveying that vibe to Taylor. And I think they are stable. They're in a pretty secure position because of Taylor leaving them so much. It is funny. Lisa gets a moment where she yells at the PRT for reading Taylor's mail and says there's no codes in it. And this is when she mentions that Regent says, hi. Oh, and in this part she says, meeting with red hands went okay. So it's, I can't tell if it was just a flub that it was red hand singular up here, but it exists to confuse me. Alien says, but what if they need to commit creative acts of violence without her? It's true. What if they did? There's always a chance a parahuman will need to commit creative acts of violence. And yes, Lisa's letter makes Taylor feel a bit glum because she's like, oh no, there's 3 villainous groups heading for them, and Gru's been in bad shape. It's all my fault. But she still did find it somewhat reassuring. Then Charlotte's letter comes in next. I mentioned Alec in my character section here, but only as far as that he didn't write a letter. He just said hi. Charlotte is the one who tells her that Atlas died and that they're turning him into a statue, covering him in brass. So, rip Atlas. And she thinks about how it makes her sad that Atlas is gone, even though he didn't have his own like being or personality, and that he was just like a homunculus for her, but that it was just one more thing, a tie to the Undersiders / Brockton Bay, that is gone now. And then the last letter is written by a mystery hench person who we can assume is Cassie, of Rachel's, and Rachel does not know how to write, and they say she doesn't know how to read, which is like true to an extent, but she does. We are able to see that she can read to some extent in her chat here. But anyway, she has this hench person write everything she says, and there's sort of a running commentary by the hench person in sort of parentheses text. And Rachel has been living on the other side of the portal in the new land and has been learning to hunt bison and stuff, and has been feeling like alone again, and is trying to socialize with more people and like putting herself out there to try to have social bonds, even though Taylor is gone now. So she's doing her best, and she ends her letter with maybe see you again at next Endbringer fight. We both stay alive. Try hard. That's all. And the hench person gets one last little bit of flair. Signing off, Rachel and Rachel's excellent minion / hench person / letter writer. So, a fun little flourish. And yes, I agree with Rachel. Try hard. These letters are fairly affecting to Taylor, who is, kind of having a hard time trying to be a hero, not really feeling like her plan has been worth it. But she's past the point of no return. She still needs to stick out this whole hero business. So yeah, she's in a bit of a pickle. For Powers, knowledge, and world building, it was cool to see Glenn's office and the kinds of considerations that he was making when thinking of uh, the costumes, the image design, the toys, all the various things. It's like clear that even if people don't always agree with what ends up happening, he's got this like complex set of reasoning and is very like well able to craft a narrative for the public. Um, and you know, the fact that he showed Taylor that security camera footage, it sort of stoppered Taylor's like endless bouldering forward about how strong she is. She was just like, "Oh man, I kind of get it. Maybe that's not the point." um, you know, speaking of which, it was like I said at the time, very cool to see Taylor in a video camera footage outside of herself. Get to see, as she said, this thing that she didn't even know she did. Oh, and you know, just for wondering's sake, we'll go to the table of contents real quick. We'll go to 21.1.2 maybe. Let's see here. Yeah, 21.1 when they go out and attack, and then they get to the yeah, when she's doing the fight at the PRT headquarters in 21.1, she's thinking of things that are happening like in other rooms constantly. So, like the idea that she dodged someone's attack without thinking about it, there's plenty of space for that to have kind of happened. But but she's just so like out of place with herself and like removed from a lot of the situations she's causing weirdly. Um, because of her like brain compartmentalization with the power. Um, oh Taylor. Uh, Other world building. There's not much world building in this chapter. We just get some good character work for like Glenn and Chevalier's reasoning for stuff and whatever. I guess the other world building is like learning about which villains are closing in on Brockton Bay. Um, but you know, it's just kind of the same villains that we were told at the end of Arc 21 would be closing in. I think we can move on. We can keep it a short episode. Right before the audience participation, I wanted to say I was in the Discord and I saw somebody's one of the people who's in our Discord, their a little tag for saying what they were doing. Like sometimes it'll read like their, you know, such and such is playing this video game or listening to Spotify or whatever the hell. But this is one of those ones where you enter manually what it says, and this was beetle emoji Taylor pilled skitter cell, and I thought that just made me laugh like right away. Um, and was worth sharing with the group. Anyway, on the audience participation, so my question was, what other book / movie / series would you want to see a scene added that's equivalent to Taylor's reading the letters from her friends? And Vic had said, Doctor Who, I miss so many of the companions, and I just want them to be happy. Triple crying emojis. And then justice for Martha and Mickey. Yeah, Martha and Mickey, I think, get super screwed over. Like, I think that they deserve a lot better than they get. Which is probably true for a lot more characters. I'm just only familiar with Doctor Who up to point maybe more than 10 years ago now. So quite a while back. Doctor Who will receive a bunch of letters and he'll have Peter Capaldi face and he'll be like, I don't remember these characters. Greg says, kind of reversed, but I would have liked for huge spoilers of the for Legend of the Galactic Heroes. I'll sort of de-spoilerify it to a certain extent. Greg wishes that characters who had died had written letters before they had died to the people who were left behind. And that a particular character feels like they are the type of person who would do that anyway, so it would make sense in the story for it to happen. So, yes, I agree. That would have been really, really good in Legend of the Galactic Heroes. Anyway, though, keep this one short, like I said. Although, I should probably answer this as well. What book, movie series would I like to see a scene added like this? I guess there kind of already is one in Final Fantasy X, so that doesn't work, because that would be my go-to answer for a lot of questions. But they already have this scene. Right near the end, you see Yuna's sphere that she was leaving behind to all the other people. What other... Oh, and I've said in the past, I really liked in movies how they used to have a, like, what happened to this person in the future, like, just 2 lines of text or so below the character on a still frame. And I usually like it when there's comedy endings to that. But, I should have prepared this answer beforehand. I would like to see... the sad correspondence between all the characters in wow, my mind is drawing a blank. Just I guess the MCU, when the Avengers characters between the Thanos Snap movie and the Reset movie. I think it would be funny to see Tony Stark's, like, sad letters, but I feel like there's got to be better answers than that. Anyway, this next one, the 23.4, in reference to the game that Taylor plays, where she comes up with powers for people on the fly. Come up with a strong power with a terrible downside. I will try and come up with my own answer for this so that I don't just sit here floundering about what answer to give at the end. Thank you, people, for listening to this. I will start the outro music. Give the speed draw a play again. The music used in these episodes is written, as always, by ScarlettXOX. This track is Imago. You can find Scarlett at twitch.tv/Scarlett_Rogue. Our Discord server can be found at the link in the stream description and the channel description. The author of the work being discussed can be supported on Patreon at patreon.com/wildbow. The full text of the work is available for free online at parahumans.wordpress.com, and there is also a fan-made audiobook of the entire work at audioworm.rain-online.org. Yeah, well, talk to you on the next stream. Bye.